It was 1847 in Portland, Maine, and a man was dying. Not from any disease that doctors could see under a microscope or feel with their hands. No, Phineas Quimby was dying from something much more insidious. He was dying from what he believed about himself. You see, Phineas had never been strong. His lungs were weak, they said. His constitution was fragile. As a clockmaker by trade, he spent his days hunched over delicate mechanisms, fixing what was broken, making things work again. But he couldn't fix himself. Or so he thought. By the time he reached his 30s, Phineas was desperate. He had tried everything. Doctors prescribed him tonics and pills. Herbal remedies lined his shelves. Nothing worked. The more medicine he took, the sicker he seemed to become. It was as if his body was listening to his fear, absorbing it, making it real. Then something happened that would change everything. Everything. In 1842, Phineas heard about a traveling doctor named Charles Poyen who was demonstrating something called mesmerism. It was all the rage in America at the time. Mesmerism, hypnotism, animal magnetism, whatever you wanted to call it, promised to unlock the hidden powers of the mind. Thousands of people filled auditoriums hoping that perhaps, just perhaps, someone could wave their hands and make the pain go away. Phineas went. He sat in that crowded room, desperate like so many others. And when he was selected to be mesmerized in front of the crowd, something shifted. As Poyen put him into what seemed like a deep sleep, Phineas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. The pain retreated. His breathing came easier. His body felt alive again. It was miraculous. It was impossible. It was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense to him. He pursued mesmerism after that, studying under practitioners, learning the techniques, developing his own methods. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because Phineas was a thinker. He was a mechanic of the mind. And as he worked with mesmerized patients, he began to notice something peculiar. The mesmerism itself didn't seem to be the cure. The cure was something else entirely. When his patients fell into that trance state and he spoke to them, something happened in their minds. Their beliefs shifted. Their understanding changed. And when they woke up, they were better. Not because Phineas had healed them with some mystical force, but because they had understood something differently. Because they had corrected an error in their thinking. That's when it hit him. That's when Phineas Quimby understood what his life's work would be. By the 1850s, he had abandoned mesmerism almost entirely. He didn't need it anymore. He had discovered that he didn't need to put people to sleep to change their minds. He could simply talk to them. He could listen to them. He could help them understand the truth about their condition. This was radical. This was dangerous. This was the future. Phineas set up his practice in Portland, and people began to come. They came with their rheumatism and their tuberculosis. They came with their nervous conditions and their mysterious ailments. They came because nothing else had worked, and they had heard whispers that this strange man who fixed clocks could also fix people. And they came from all walks of life. There were wealthy merchants seeking relief from their gout. There were poor women suffering from what doctors called hysteria. There were respected gentlemen whose bodies had betrayed them, who had been told by physicians that their conditions were permanent, incurable, inevitable. What Phineas offered them was something entirely different from what they expected. He didn't offer them medicines. He didn't offer them mystical passes of his hands. He offered them understanding. He offered them the truth. The way he worked was simple but profound. He would sit with a patient and listen to their story. Not a quick glance and a prescription, but a real listening. Deep listening. The kind of listening that makes a person feel truly seen for the first time in their lives. Then, carefully and patiently, he would begin to question their beliefs. A woman came to him suffering from terrible headaches that had plagued her for 5 years. Doctors said it was her constitution. Her family said it was her nerves. She had accepted it as a fate. Phineas asked her, "What do you believe is causing this pain?" She told him about a trauma from her childhood, a fever she'd had, the way the doctor had told her mother that the fever might have damaged her brain. From that moment, she had lived in fear. She had expected this pain. She had prepared for it. And her body, faithful servant that it was, had given her exactly what she expected. But the fever didn't damage your brain, Phineas told her gently. You're thinking the same thoughts, having the same feelings, moving the same way. Your mind is working perfectly. The question is, do you believe what that old doctor said, Or do you believe the truth? That you are whole? That you are healthy? That there is nothing wrong with you? The woman left his office that day lighter than she'd come in. The headaches didn't disappear immediately. But something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed. She had been given permission to believe something different about herself. And over the following weeks and months, as she held onto this new understanding, the headaches faded. They didn't vanish in a miraculous instant. They gradually released their grip on her, the way fog lifts on a spring morning. This became the pattern. Patient after patient found relief through understanding. Through correcting what Phineas called error, the false beliefs about the body and health that had taken root in the mind and manifested in physical symptoms. A businessman came to him with severe digestive problems. His doctors had given him dozens of treatments. His wife had tried everything. Nothing worked. Phineas discovered that the man lived in constant anxiety about business failure. He feared losing everything. His stomach responded to his fear. It clenched and twisted with every worry. Your stomach isn't sick, Phineas explained. Your mind is troubled. You're in a constant state of fear, and your body is responding rationally to that fear. The question is, are you going to keep believing that failure is inevitable, or are you going to understand that you have the strength to face whatever comes? The businessman began to change his thinking. He stopped catastrophizing about his business. He began to see his strength instead of his weakness. Within weeks, his digestive problems had resolved. A young woman came with severe pain in her joints. She was told she had rheumatism, that it would cripple her, that she would spend her life in increasing disability. She came to Phineas half expecting him to tell her the same thing, just with a gentler voice. Instead, he helped her understand that her fear about becoming crippled was feeding the disease. Her belief in the inevitability of disability was making her body cooperate with that belief. What if, instead, she believed in her body's capacity to heal? What if she believed she was stronger than the disease? It wasn't about positive thinking in the modern sense of denying reality. It was about understanding the truth of her actual situation, rather than the false story she had been told by fear. Word spread. People traveled from other states to see this remarkable man. They came from Boston and New York. They came from Philadelphia. Some were desperate, having exhausted every conventional treatment. Some were curious, wondering if this mysterious cure through understanding actually worked or if it was simply an elaborate delusion. But Phineas Quimby didn't care much about convincing skeptics. He wasn't interested in proving anything to doctors. He was too busy helping people heal. His practice grew. His reputation spread. People began to talk about him in hushed tones. Some called him a charlatan. Some called him a healer. Some called him something between a philosopher and a mystic. Some of his patients reported that their illnesses had vanished completely. Others reported slow, steady improvement. Some reported nothing at all. The variation didn't bother Phineas. He understood that healing wasn't a magic trick that worked the same way on everyone. It depended on how willing the person was to change their understanding. It depended on how deeply the old false beliefs were rooted. It depended on whether the person could accept that they might have been wrong about themselves. This last part was crucial, because the truth that Phineas taught was humbling. It suggested that people had, in some sense, participated in creating their own illnesses. That their beliefs, their thoughts, their understanding of reality had manifested in their bodies as disease. Most people didn't want to accept that. It was easier to believe that they were victims of circumstance, that their diseases had simply happened to them through bad luck or bad genetics or the random cruelty of the universe. But those who did accept it, those who understood that they had the power to change their thoughts and beliefs, those people healed. Phineas attracted followers. Some were patients who became so convinced of his methods that they began studying with him, hoping to learn how to help others. Some were intellectuals and philosophers who sensed that he was onto something profound about the nature of mind and body and reality itself. Among these followers was Julius Dresser and his wife Annetta. They studied with Phineas, learned his methods, and after his death, they would become instrumental in spreading his ideas through America and the world. They called the teaching New Thought. They called it the science of mind. They would eventually influence the rise of the Christian Science movement and countless other philosophies of mental healing. But in his lifetime, in his practice in Portland, Phineas Quimby was simply a man trying to help people understand the truth about themselves. There was a patient named Sarah. Sarah had suffered from a condition that her doctors called consumption. Tuberculosis, we would call it now. It was a death sentence. Tuberculosis in that era was the leading cause of death in America. It was wasting away whole families. When someone was diagnosed with consumption, people began to make arrangements for their funeral. Sarah had been coughing blood for 2 years. She had lost 50 pounds. Her family had essentially given up on her. They brought her to Phineas Quimby as a last resort, not out of hope, but out of desperation. What else was there to lose? Phineas examined her. He didn't look for signs of disease. He looked into her eyes. He listened to her breathing. He asked her questions. "What do you believe about your illness?" he asked. Sarah told him what her doctors had told her. That consumption was hereditary. That her mother had died of it. That she was dying of it too. That it was only a matter of time. But is that the truth? Phineas asked gently. Or is that a belief? Is it what the doctors told you? Or is it the actual reality of your body? Sarah began to cry. Because deep down, she had always known the difference. Deep down, she had known that she was participating in the creation of her own illness. She had believed she would die, so her body had begun the process of dying. Over the following months, Phineas worked with Sarah. He helped her understand a different truth. That yes, her mother had died of consumption. But that didn't make it her fate. That yes, her body was weakened. But that didn't make it hopeless. That yes, the illness was real and the symptoms were real. But the belief that she was dying, that was the thing that was killing her. Slowly, Sarah began to change her mind. She began to eat more. She began to take walks. She began to believe that she might have a future. The coughing decreased. The blood stopped. She regained weight. Her color came back to her cheeks. Within a year, Sarah was healthy. Within 2 years, she was unrecognizable from the dying woman who had arrived at Phineas's office. She would live another 30 years, marry, have children, and eventually become a teacher of his methods herself. Stories like Sarah spread. They inspired hope. They also inspired fear among the medical establishment. Doctors began to denounce Phineas Quimby. They called him a fraud and a charlatan. They said his patients were experiencing the placebo effect, that it had nothing to do with real healing. They said he was taking money from desperate, vulnerable people and offering them false hope. The medical establishment wanted to protect its monopoly on healing. And here was this clockmaker-turned philosopher offering a completely different paradigm. If Phineas was right, if the mind really could heal the body through understanding, then what did that mean for the entire medical profession? What did it mean for the power structure that had been built around the idea that only doctors could fix broken bodies? It meant everything was changing. It meant everything they believed was being questioned. But Phineas never fought back against his critics. He never tried to prove them wrong. He simply continued his work, healing person after person, understanding by understanding. There was a gentleman named Robert. Robert was a prosperous businessman in his 60s. He had suffered a stroke. Half of his body was paralyzed. The doctors told him he would never walk again. They told him he was fortunate it wasn't worse. They suggested he prepare for a slow decline into complete immobility. Robert's wife brought him to Phineas, not because she believed in miracles, but because she refused to accept that her husband's life was over. Robert was furious at first. He was a man accustomed to control, and his body had betrayed him. He was furious at his doctors. He was furious at himself. He was furious at God. Phineas let him be furious. He didn't try to cheer him up or convince him he would be fine. Instead, he asked Robert a simple question. What if the doctors are wrong? How could they be wrong? Robert demanded, I can barely move my arm. I can't feel my leg. This isn't a matter of belief. This is physical damage. Is it? Phineas asked. Or is it your belief about physical damage? You've accepted the narrative that your stroke was permanent, that your body is broken beyond repair. But what if that's not true? What if the damage isn't to your body, but to your understanding of what your body is capable of? Robert wanted to dismiss this as nonsense, but something in Phineas's certainty, something in the way he spoke, made Robert wonder, what if the doctors had been wrong? What if his body was capable of healing? So Robert began to practice a different understanding. Every time his paralyzed limbs felt numb and useless, instead of accepting that truth, he tried to understand a different truth. That his nervous system was still intact. That his brain could still send signals. that his body was fundamentally whole, even if it wasn't functioning perfectly yet. It took months. Real, hard work. Mental work. The kind of work that's invisible to everyone else, that looks like nothing from the outside. But gradually, Robert's fingers began to move. Then his wrist. Then his entire arm. The sensation returned to his leg. He began to stand, then to walk without assistance. Within a year, Robert was back to his normal life. His friends were amazed. His doctors were baffled. Robert knew the truth. His body had healed once he had healed his understanding. This is what Phineas Quimby was doing. This is what he was teaching. Not that the body wasn't real. Not that disease wasn't real. But that the mind and the body were not separate. That belief and physical reality were intimately connected. That a person's understanding of themselves directly shaped their physical existence. It was revolutionary. It was dangerous. It was true. As the 1850s progressed and Phineas grew older, he began to formalize his teaching. He started to write down his ideas. He worked to articulate a coherent philosophy of what he called mind cure. He believed that disease was fundamentally a disease of understanding. That people got sick because they had wrong ideas about themselves and about reality. The cure, then, was truth. Not truth as an abstract concept, but truth as a living, breathing, felt understanding that could penetrate the deepest recesses of a person's mind and body. I come as the truth, Phineas would tell his patients, not in an arrogant way, but as a statement of his purpose. I come to correct error. I come to help you understand what is actually true about yourself, so that your body can finally stop fighting you and can heal. He taught that God, or the universe, or natural law, or whatever you wanted to call it, was fundamentally good. That health and wholeness were the natural state of existence. That disease and suffering were the result of people living in contradiction to that truth. When someone got sick, they had forgotten the truth. They were living in error, in a false understanding of reality. And illness was the consequence of that error. It was the body's way of telling the person that something was wrong with their thinking. This put an enormous responsibility on the sick person. It meant they weren't victims. It meant they weren't helpless. But it also meant that they had to be willing to change. They had to be willing to question the beliefs that had gotten them sick. They had to be willing to exchange error for understanding. Some people couldn't do it. Some people came to Phineas and listened to everything he said, and then went home and forgot it all. They returned to their old beliefs because at least those beliefs were familiar. At least those beliefs didn't require them to change. But others got it. Others felt the relief of finally finding someone who could explain why they were sick. Others experienced the liberation of realizing that they weren't broken. They had just believed something that wasn't true. By the 1860s, Phineas Quimby had become a legendary figure in America. People came from across the country to see him. His office in Portland was always full. The local doctors hated him. The local religious establishment was divided on him. Some saw him as a heretic. Some saw him as a modern prophet. Phineas himself remained calm through all of it. He wasn't trying to build an empire. He wasn't trying to start a new religion. He was simply doing the work that felt true to him. There was an 8-year-old boy named Thomas. Thomas had been born deaf. His parents had taken him to dozens of doctors. They had tried everything. The doctors said the problem was in the structure of his ear, that it was unfixable, that Thomas would be deaf for life. Thomas's mother brought him to Phineas Quimby, carrying the heavy weight of a mother's desperation. She didn't really believe he could help, but she had nowhere else to turn. Phineas spent time with Thomas. He explained to the boy, as simply as a child could understand, that his body knew how to hear, that the ability to hear was there, inside of him, that nothing was broken that couldn't be fixed. Then he asked the boy, "Do you believe you can hear?" Thomas wasn't sure. He had never heard anything in his life. Why would he believe he could hear now? But Phineas had a way of making belief seem possible. He had a way of making truth seem tangible and real. Your ears work, Phineas told the boy. Your mind works. You are whole. You just need to understand this. You just need to believe it. Over the following weeks, as Thomas's mother continued to reinforce this understanding, something began to happen. A sound. First, just a whisper, then clearer, then unmistakable. The boy could hear. By the time he was 10, Thomas had normal hearing. He went to school with other children. He learned to read and write and do arithmetic. He heard music for the first time in his life and wept with joy. His mother wept too, not because a miracle had occurred, but because her son had been healed by understanding the truth about himself. By the 1860s, Phineas was in his 70s. He had been doing this work for more than 20 years. He was tired, but he was at peace. He knew what he had done. He knew what he had discovered. He knew how many lives he had touched. He also knew that his work wasn't finished. He was acutely aware that he needed to pass this teaching on, that it couldn't die with him, that there were others who had been called to this work, who could carry it forward into the future. He began to focus more on teaching practitioners than on treating individual patients. He worked with people like Julius Dresser, helping them understand the principles deeply so they could teach others. This is not about me, he would tell them. This is about truth. This is about understanding. Any person who fully grasps the principles can do this work. The healing doesn't come from me. It comes from the correction of error. It comes from understanding what is actually true. In 1866, Phineas Quimby died. He was 74 years old. He had spent more than half his life doing this work. He had healed thousands of people. He had changed the course of American thinking about health, spirituality, and the power of the mind. But here's the thing that most people don't understand about Phineas Quimby. The thing that makes his story so profound. He died of cancer. Despite all his understanding, despite all his knowledge about the healing power of the mind, despite having helped countless people overcome incurable diseases, he got cancer and he died. What does that mean? Does it mean his entire philosophy was false? Does it mean that mind cure doesn't really work? Does it mean that he was a fraud all along? Or does it mean something else entirely? Those who studied Phineas deeply understood that his teaching had never been about immortality. It had never been about transcending physical reality entirely. His teaching was about understanding the truth of the present moment, about correcting error wherever it appeared, about living in alignment with what is actually real. When Phineas got cancer, he didn't deny it. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. He didn't tell himself a false story about his health. He faced the reality of his condition directly, and he faced it with the understanding he had developed over a lifetime. He died in peace. He died knowing that he had done what he came to do. He died knowing that he had helped people understand something fundamental about the nature of healing and health and the power of the human mind. After his death, the movement that he started exploded. His followers taught his methods. New thought organizations were established. The Christian Science movement was founded partly on principles that Phineas had discovered. Mental healing became a major force in American spirituality and health. His ideas influenced everything that came after. They influenced positive thinking movements. They influenced modern psychology and psychosomatic medicine. They influenced the understanding of the placebo effect. They influenced the entire field of mind-body medicine. Medical schools today teach that the mind and body are connected. Psychologists understand that belief shapes behavior and physiology. Doctors acknowledge that stress and negative thinking can make people sick. None of this was understood in Phineas's time. None of this was part of the mainstream medical worldview. But Phineas Quimby knew it. A clockmaker from Portland, Maine, knew it. He knew it because he had experienced it. He had cured his own illness by changing his understanding. He had healed thousands of other people using the same principle. He had discovered something fundamental about the nature of human health and healing. The question his life raises is one that we are still grappling with today. How much of our illness is belief? How much of our health is understanding? How much power do we actually have over our own bodies? How much of what we experience as objective reality is actually shaped by our subjective beliefs? These are not simple questions, and they are not questions that Phineas Quimby answered with certainty. But he asked them. He explored them. He developed practical methods for using the answer to help people heal. There was a woman named Mary. Mary was in her 40s when she came to Phineas. She had been sick for her entire adult life. She had a different complaint almost every month. Doctors had given her every diagnosis they could think of. She had been prescribed so many medicines that her body had become dependent on them. She had become addicted to the role of being sick. This was the hardest kind of case for Phineas, because the person wasn't just living in error about their body. They were living in error about their identity. They had become so identified with being sick that getting well meant losing their sense of self. Phineas worked with Mary for a long time. Months and months. He helped her understand that she was not her illness, that her true identity was health, that her body's natural state was wholeness. But Mary kept creating new symptoms. Whenever one was resolved, another appeared. It was as if part of her was fighting for the right to be sick. Finally, one day, Phineas asked her a question that changed everything. What would happen to you if you got well? Who would you be? Mary didn't have an answer. And that silence told her everything. Getting well meant losing the identity that had sustained her. It meant becoming someone new. And that terrified her. But slowly, over time, with Phineas's help, Mary began to construct a new identity. She began to imagine herself as a well person. She began to understand what a healthy life might look like. She began to believe it was possible. And eventually, Mary got well. She stopped creating new symptoms. She actually healed. She lived the last 15 years of her life in good health, free from the constant cycle of illness and treatment that had defined her before. This, perhaps, was Phineas Quimby's greatest insight. That healing wasn't just about fixing symptoms. It was about understanding truth. It was about changing the story you tell yourself about yourself. It was about becoming someone new. His legacy is still alive, still working, still healing. Every person who has ever gotten better by changing their mind. Every person who has ever released a physical symptom by releasing a limiting belief. Every person who has ever understood that they have more power over their health than they thought they had. All of these people are living the legacy of Phineas Quimby. He understood something that medicine is still catching up to today. That we are not just our bodies. We are the stories we tell ourselves about our bodies. We are our beliefs. We are our understanding. And when the story changes, when the belief shifts, when the understanding transforms, the body follows. It always does. This is the message that Phineas Quimby lived and died for. Not that disease isn't real, but that understanding is more real. Not that medicine has no place, but that truth has first place. He was a clockmaker who learned to fix the most complicated mechanism of all, the human mind, the human body, the intersection of belief and reality where healing actually happens. His work began in a small office in Portland, Maine, but it spread across America and around the world. It changed how people think about health. It changed how people think about the power of the mind. It changed what is possible. And it all started because one sick man, desperate and dying, decided to look deeper into his illness. He decided to ask not what disease he had, but what belief about himself was creating the disease. And when he found the answer, when he corrected that error, when he understood the truth, he healed. That moment, that single moment of understanding, rippled out across generations. It touched thousands of lives. It influenced millions of people he never met. It changed the course of human history. And it all came from one principle. One simple, profound principle that Phineas Quimby lived and taught. Disease comes from error. Healing comes from understanding. Truth cures. In a world of pills and procedures and complicated medical interventions, Phineas Quimby reminds us of something we have largely forgotten, that the most powerful medicine is often the simplest. Understanding, truth, correct belief. He reminds us that we are not passive victims of our bodies. We are active participants in our health. Our thoughts matter. Our beliefs matter. Our understanding matters. When we change our understanding, we change our reality. When we correct our error, we heal. It's not magic. It's not miracle. It's just the way the human mind and body are designed to work. And it all starts with one question. The question that Phineas Quimby asked his patients again and again. What do you believe about yourself? And is it true? The answers to those questions might just change your life. They changed his. And they've changed millions of others in the more than a century since his death. That is the legacy of Phineas Quimby. The man who healed through understanding. The man who proved that the most powerful cure is often the simplest. The man who helped people see that the truth about themselves had the power to set them free. Free from pain. Free from illness. Free from the false beliefs that had trapped them in suffering. Free to live. Free to heal. Free to understand. That was his gift to the world. And that gift is still being given, still being received, still changing lives every single day.
Himedien jalargietier kie chacha hai. Itki me kekti kardani itran me moi charang jarti hai. Iti me per
I am whole. I am strong.
It is not that the body or the disease is unreal, but that belief and physical reality are intimately connected. The connection between the physical brain and the spirit is not as simple as once believed. Indeed, your recovery, sir, is proof of this new age of medicine.
We must move beyond the confines of material medicine. Truth as cure. This is where true epistemological healing begins.
Sir, my intention is not to overstep, merely to ensure the continuity of the evening classes for the working men.
The sickness is not real in the way you think, Doctor. It is an error of the mind. Understand the truth, and the body must follow.
The evidence suggests that the natural state of reality is indeed wholeness. We are designed for health, not illness.
Wellness is the normal state. Disease is merely an aberration from this fundamental state of health.
Forgetting the truth about oneself creates this suffering. This illness is merely a wake-up call toward alignment. Living in error creates these physical consequences. The body, you see, manifests the mind's false understanding directly into ailment.
The illness, Doctor, is merely the body's way of telling the consciousness that the thinking is wrong. The symptom itself is the message.
Do not embrace the identity of a victim. You hold the power to reshape your reality.
We shift from passive recipients to active creators. See how the smallest gesture changes everything.
The greatest transformations begin not with action, but with a fundamental shift in what you believe to be true about yourself. You must be willing to question your deepest convictions about health. True healing begins only when we examine the mind.
The procedure itself is straightforward, Mr. Thompson. We'd schedule it for next week, and you should see improvement immediately. I understand your reluctance, but this course of treatment is essential for your recovery. The X-rays clearly show the progression.
But
I feel it in my bones, Doctor. It's fundamentally wrong with me.
The illness wasn't in your body, but in that very belief. He is an affront to the medical science we uphold.
We must protect the integrity of the institution, Doctor. He cannot stay. He is a blasphemer and a heretic. He defiles the temple. He is chosen by the Most High. You blind fools.
Yes, I see. That understanding is the beginning of the healing. Thank you for sharing that with me.
As you can see on the model, the structure of the inner ear is severely malformed. Unfortunately, this means the deafness is profound and cannot be surgically corrected. Even if this part doesn't work, your whole body still knows how to hear. It has a wisdom all its own. The capacity for hearing is within you, my boy. It waits only to be awakened through belief and understanding.
You see, Robert, this is where no man has ever set foot. Imagine the possibilities, the discoveries waiting to be made right here. Just as the needle finds true north, the mind too has a direction, a natural pull towards wellness. Rest assured, his ears are working perfectly, and his mind, young man, is just as sharp as mine. This knowledge is a gift, but only if you accept it with both understanding and unwavering belief.
Listen closely with these ears. They work very well. Phineas knows you can hear. It was first synthesized in 1897, although its properties weren't fully understood until much later.
If a train leaves the station at 75 miles per hour,
This research is vital, Doctor. You must ensure it continues after I'm gone. The future of medicine depends on it. As I've shown you, Mr. Dresser, the physical manifestation is secondary. The true work begins in correcting the mental narrative. You see now, the sickness is not in the body, but in the belief. Your understanding is the key to their recovery. It is not the physical ailment, but the error in the mind that must be corrected.
So the sickness itself is merely a shadow of the thought.
Precisely. The truth is the cure.
The principle holds true, regardless of who presents it. Your task is to understand the framework, not merely...
It is not enough to simply believe in the healer. One must grasp the underlying principle at work.
So the understanding itself is the mechanism, not the faith.
The discovery of factual accuracy is paramount. It is a universal concept, one that benefits everyone within these halls of learning and beyond. Healing comes from understanding what is actually true, a universal principle, not a personal gift.
You see, the power to heal resides not just within me, but within anyone who grasps these simple principles. It is a gift for all.
The cause of sickness lies not in the body, but in the mind.
By understanding this truth, we unlock the door to perfect health.
My teaching was never about avoiding the dust. We find eternity not in the body, but in the lessons carried forward by you. It is not about transcending the physical, but about living in truth within this physical reality.
Truth is found not in escaping our reality, but in aligning ourselves with the present moment. It requires facing what is here, not denying it. We cannot keep this profound knowledge confined to Portland. It is our duty now to spread these liberating ideas to the world.
We are gathered here today to ensure that the profound insights of Phineas are taught in every major city. The mind is the master of the body.
Our founders' discoveries reveal the inherent spirituality of existence, aligning perfectly with the Master's teachings on healing and grace.
We now have the technology, the fMRI scans, to prove what the ancients only theorized.
The case of Phineas Gage taught us a crucial lesson. Belief shapes both behavior and physiology. This insight is now discipline-wide among psychologists.
AC, NTA.
But consider the evidence, Doctor. The localization of function in the cerebrum is undeniable.
Rubbish! A damaged brain means a damaged mind. Simple as that.
While the iron destroyed much of his left frontal lobe, Gage's survival revolutionized our understanding of personality and cerebral localization.
Your pain is real, madam, but its cause is in the belief.
So if I change my belief, I can heal?
Precisely.
You must understand, Mary, that the illness is not your true identity. Your true nature is perfect health.
I see it now.
The body's natural state is wholeness. Wellness is the actual state, not an artificial imposition.
So the illness is merely an illusion?
Precisely.
But the leg feels entirely better.
Mrs. Mary,
These new complaints are merely substitutes. We must address the underlying resistance.
What would happen if you got well?
Who would you be?
You must see yourself not as you are, but as you can be, whole and perfect.
I am beginning to understand. I feel it taking hold.
Time to nare. We are not just bodies, but the stories we tell about our bodies. Identity is narrative.
We are our beliefs. Beliefs constitute identity. We become what we believe.
It always does, always. The body, you see, always responds to the mind's understanding.
I'm not saying disease is unreal, nor that symptoms are unmeasurable, or that the physical condition is unimportant.
Not that medicine has no place. Medicine has value, treatment has purpose, not dismissing medical help. Truth takes priority. Understanding comes before treatment. Alignment with reality being foundation. Observe where the damage occurred. This proves, gentlemen, that the mind is not a single entity, but localized here, within the brain. The initial markers suggest one thing, yet the imaging tells a different story entirely. We need to understand the pathway interaction at this junction.
And the pain shoots up my arm, Doctor. I fear I'm wasting away.
Yes, yes. But tell me, madam, what is it you believe?
Imbalance comes from misconception, core principle. Do not be afraid of the truth. It is not a burden, but the cure itself. Simple, universal.
Understanding is often more powerful than pills, and simplicity surpasses complexity.
Observe, the needle reacts not to spirits, but to the flow of the nervous fluid. It is purely a mechanical process, madam, quite understandable.
The connection between our thoughts and our physical structure is undeniable. Look at the spine. It holds not just our body, but...
What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about yourself?
It's like the past keeps repeating itself. I can't seem to break free.
But that's the legacy we build on, realizing the truth